All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Millennials World podcast. And Brian, you and I have
Yeah,
been talking about doing this for a very, very long time. We've been plugging
we have.
the Lucifer and the Father GoFundMe and Crowdfund and giving the
Oh,
audience of our podcast just so many updates about the production here and there. But we finally got the guys
they've been
back
trickling
on.
out. Yeah, thank you so
Abso-freaking-lutely.
much for being here, Scott, Shawn, Robert. It's always a pleasure having you. We've been looking forward to it for a long time.
Well, thank you. Yes. I think this is my third time on here and Shawn and Bob's second time each, but this is the first time all three of us have been here.
Yes.
Right. That's Scott. I'm Shawn, and Bob. Go ahead and tell him your voice here.
Hello, hello. Well, I so appreciate the opportunity.
I really enjoyed your interview when you were here with the guys. I did listen to that. Hopefully, we won't have the same power problems Brian had during that one.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite episodes we did.
Yeah,
In
absolutely.
spite of that, the interview itself, I enjoyed a lot. So it seemed like a good time. We've been plugging Lucifer and the Father, the second episode. We've, been pushing forward, trying to get anyone that listens to donate to the GoFundMe and to match their donations. Anyone that listens to the show that learns about Lucifer and the Father, the project we're discussing today through the show, and then decides to donate, Taylor and I will match your donation. The trailer for the second episode of Lucifer and the Father is here. It seemed a good time to have the guys on and kind of give us, an image of, what they're working towards, what's up next.
Well, we're trying to raise the post-production budget because it took longer than we had hoped to get the second one up and running. So I kind of just said to Bob, Shawn, what do you say that once we have the production budget, we shoot it so that we can have the shooting in the can, and then we'll worry about raising the funds for the post-production later. And they said, yeah, we kind of all said, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. So it took us a little while. We were going to shoot it last May, and then Shawn saw the first draft of my script and said, this has so much potential. I think Sarah and I need more time to make it even better. And they did. Shawn, I want to take this opportunity to say that the original script was just what I could come up with at the time. And you and Sarah improved it tenfold. I think it's the most Shawn's ever changed one of my scripts when he's done it. But it was all for the better. It was all for the better.
Yeah, and I went through it and had my input, and then my wife Sarah has helped rewrite a few different projects with me. Kind of added her take on it too, and yeah, I'm really happy with the result. We shot in the end of September, early October, in the Bend Sisters area of Oregon. We're up against the weather. In fact, it even kind of rained, I think, on the second or third day. We're under this big tree, so it was funny. But yeah, it was like, we're watching out for the rain clouds coming, and I'm like, okay, we got like 5 minutes.
It's coming.
What's next? And welcome to independent filmmaking, right?
One of the things that really, I think, seemed interesting to me about Lucifer the Father when we first met you guys, and then when I saw the pilot, is just the general premise feels really ambitious to me. The more ambitious, I think, than you see from a lot of kind of independent series. And that's why I really wanted to push it and help you guys however I can, because it does seem like it's kind of a big concept,
Well, I think you can thank Mr. Justice for that.
Well, no, Scott came up with it, but the thing that I loved about it and wanted to get involved is it wasn't preachy. It was very kind of a discussion and an argument, or not argument, but really a discussion going back and forth about bigger things, about bigger matters, and that's one thing I really liked about it. When we started looking at the second episode, I really thought it would be cool to bring in more modern day characters into the mix. So you maybe had someone going through a certain situation. The second episode deals with a doctor who's going through COVID, and she's seeing all these deaths around her. And I thought that was really cool to be able to write that in and have her struggling with, where is God in all this? All this bad things are going on, and I feel abandoned. And we kind of wanted to address, what would that look like? What would God say to someone about that? And of course, you had the Satan, Lucifer coming in, kind of chiding and being very, you see, God has abandoned you. And so there's this whole thing going on. And then they go back to the time of Joseph, where Joseph, was in prison for years. And he very well could have felt abandoned by God during that time. And he wasn't a bad guy. He didn't deserve prison even. In fact, he ended up there because he withstood his boss's wife's advances.
That she falsely accuses him.
Falsely accuses him. Thank you. And so I loved it. I thought it was great because it answers and addresses maybe some questions a lot of people have regarding, where is God when all these bad things are going on.
One other thing that's worth mentioning is that I would honestly say that this episode, because I had written 5 other follow-ups to the original one, all of which took place with God and the devil interacting with Bible characters, and this one was actually kind of my fail-safe episode that I had in my back pocket. It was a little bit more therapeutic than the others, because during COVID, I was going through some of this. Yeah, wondering, when is this going to end? As a guy who has faith, where is God in this horrible situation? And one of the tricks that you learn very early on when it comes to filmmaking is, Shawn, there's that old adage, show, don't tell. And I was thinking, okay, how can we get to that quickly, somebody being overwhelmed by the pandemic? And I'm like, well, the people that were staring it right in the face were medical personnel. So the thing that makes sense would be to do it from the POV of a doctor. So that's kind of where that original idea came from. And during the time that our church was doing sermons online and our building was closed, I just remember that a guy who was our interim pastor at the time was doing a story on Joseph, and he kind of blew by it, but he had said something that I'd never heard before, which was that Joseph was in prison for 3 years. You see it, like Andrew Lloyd Webber does Joseph in the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat that is based on this.
Yeah.
Like, for example, they do the big number, Go, 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 Joseph, when he interprets the cupbearer and baker's dreams, and then there's intermission, and then Pharaoh has a dream and he's calling on him. Well, what they didn't put in that play and what they don't put in a lot of the movies is that there were 3 years went by between those two events. So Joseph was basically just sitting and waiting in prison in between those two things. And I'm like, okay, we know Joseph had great faith, but I'm going to take a wild guess that he wasn't happy-go-lucky every single night during those 3 years.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where the concept of the idea came from for the second one.
One of the things with, I guess, this first episode, and it seems like this is going to continue, maybe broadened a little bit, is, Shawn, you were both talking about how every episode involves a discussion between Lucifer and God. One of my favorite formats for like a motion picture is something that takes place in usually something that feels like it could be written for the stage. I'm always really impressed by that. If you've seen like Alfred Hitchcock's Rope or something, I kind of think one of the things I really liked about the Lucifer and the Father pilot was that it was able, with such a simple setting and just with Scott and Robert with your performances, to like just even tackle those big questions and to really evoke those emotions. Because I'm always really a fan of that minimalism, seeing how much you can get emotionally out of it.
Well, it may have looked simple, but you should have seen where Mr. Justice had us film all those things. The hardest part was just getting to the location. We could make it look simple.
Standing off a cliff.
Oh, yeah, I can tell you.
Yeah,
I realized that we were in the middle of shooting. The location that Shawn picked for part of the Joseph prison set was literally on the side of a cliff. Now, thankfully, it was on the side of a cliff in a state, so we didn't have to hike a long way to get there like we did with some of the locations in the first one. But I think it was about halfway through, and I realized, and I'm like, wait a minute. Beacon Rock during the Reconciler, all those locations during the first one, and then I'm like, Shawn, every time we write a script together, you put me on a cliff.
It makes for more interesting visuals, right?
It's a visual medium, yeah.
Well, and we debated that actually for a while. Scott and I did, as far as, do we put Joseph in a modern day jail? Do we try and mock up some kind of, cave like they did in the movie or in the cartoon? Was it Spielberg? No, who did that? The Joseph one. It was
the Prince of Egypt.
Yeah, Prince of Egypt.
And then the main producers of that did a direct-to-video of Joseph a couple years later.
Right. Well, it was in a cave, right? So ultra low-budget filmmaking, you're like, well, what if we had some kind of like sheer rock wall, behind him that looked like it, it was in some kind of enclosure. And, fortunately, I kind of put the word out to a few people that I knew in the area here. And someone told someone to the point where it came back and it was like, hey, my family owns some property out by Sisters, Oregon. And there's the whole, rock wall kind of cliff side a little bit that you could probably get a camera into. And I got really excited when we went there. My wife and I went and scouted it. And then we came back and it's like, yeah, that'll work. And I'm a bit of a hiker, I guess.
You live in Oregon. You mean
Oregon. So to me, it was like, oh yeah, we can get him there. The closer
I've had
we
that
got.
experience so many times when someone comes to visit you.
But Bob and I are not hikers, is the problem.
The closer we got, I was like,
Yeah, but I understand because you just live there. You don't even think about it, right? You're just like, it's just a nice little walk. I understand.
Well,
What
you know,
cracked me
each of
up-
us holds
what-
a hand.
What cracked me up, Brian and Taylor, was the fact that on this estate, because we had originally, talked about, and one thing that's worth mentioning, I Googled the living daylights out of this. I looked for every image, I found a mini series that I think TNN did. They had, during the Baker and Cupbearer dream interpretation scene, which is the only real part of the story we're covering in this, they had them in like an outdoor prison with wooden bars, which I thought looked kind of odd, but hey, there really is like, all the Bible says is that Joseph was in prison. It really doesn't describe the prison. And accounts and artist images I found were all over the map. They had everything from a Stonewall prison with the traditional bar window to one account said he might have been in just a pit. You know what I mean? So it was we kind of had free reign to go with it. But what cracked me up about the estate was you got the estate up top, you got the stuff, you got the wall down there that Shawn found. And on the other side of the property is a metal barred in old apple orchard that looks like prison bars. And I'm looking at this and I'm going, okay, I say, Shawn, find a prison. You go on this estate. There's a whole thing with bars over there, and your first instinct is to go down the hill. We did wind up using part of that small apple orchard as like the back, so that we could make it look like Joseph, the cupbearer, and Baker were in a fenced-in area. But it was actually two different locations, and one of the, I don't want to say disappointments, because I had a great time. It was just great to be with Bob and Shawn again and stuff. But I didn't get to be actually on screen with Bob as much as I had hoped, because since we had to split up the location, a lot of our exchanges were talking, pretending that the other one was there, when in fact we actually weren't. Because I went down to the location, and so I'm supposed to be talking to the father, but I'm actually talking to like the boom operator to the left of the camera instead.
I guess one of the things I wonder about, speaking of the performances, Robert and Scott, Lucifer and The Father, do you feel like any sort of like pressure when you're playing those roles? I mean, it's literally Lucifer and the Father, Is it something you ever think about, like anything you really want to make sure that you like encompass or like get across to the audience in those roles? Because it's like, they're important, right?
Yeah, like honoring the responsibility of that kind of title.
Yeah, well, I certainly, didn't take it for granted, and I feel like there was quite a bit of prayer that went into this process of getting it done. But I felt when the time came that I really felt that we were given the right attitude for it as it came about. So, but again, it's an incredible role, and one that you certainly don't want to take lightly. That's for sure.
Yeah, and
but
I
of
think,
course,
Robert,
once Shawn gets through adding all the Shakespearean language to it, why then that just that goes right to the core of a godlike presence.
I think Scott's dialogue, but also just your performance in the pilot. I rewatched it last week because I knew we would be doing this. I do think you do get kind of like a really nuanced portrayal. Your interpretation of the father. It's very like dignified and it's solemn, but there's seems like there's good-natured humor in there, and there's kind of nuance and perspective. I thought that was really impressive. I'm really excited to see, obviously, the new series, but seeing that Scott's back as Lucifer, like, I don't know if you want to hear this, Scott. I really love like a villain role of an actor that relishes a villain role, and you really seem to relish that role.
It's called casting against type. Yeah. Actually, I've said this several times before. It's just, you go up to an actor like Bob, who has 100 film credits, was directed by Steven Spielberg and Lincoln. It's flattering if they hear, I think you would play God the Father very well. I didn't really know how to approach somebody and say, hey, I think you'd make a great Satan. I mean, and so and I will tell you, it is basically playing the devil is really not that hard. You just got to think of every negative thing that's ever happened to you, and being a complete word I'm not allowed to say, I'll abridge it here. Basically, you just got to be a complete a-hole. It's basically how you play the devil. Playing evil incarnate is really not that hard, but I will say this. A couple of weeks before we shot the first one, I asked my mom to pray with me because I was like, when you get into a role, you're really trying to get inside the character's head, and let's be honest here, you don't want to get too deep into the head of the devil.
Yeah, no method acting from the sounds of it. Don't get a pitchfork or anything like that.
Yeah. Look what happened to Heath Ledger. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, I thought I was thinking that as well.
Funny thing
But
is, Taylor, we could go into a long discussion. The pitchfork and ugly red things are completely inaccurate to how Scripture describes the devil. So,
Oh no, absolutely. All caricature stuff from modernity,
of course,
essentially.
I don't believe he looks like me either, and I don't believe God looks like Bob either. So.
Yeah.
We need to say that right now. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We don't want the audience getting any ideas, obviously. Yeah.
That's right. No,
I've
no
said this
idol
before.
worship here. Come on.
We cast people based on what we thought the essence of them were, because I was like, okay, if I'm going to reduce, say, ever loving, ever present God to a person, well, the first words of the Lord's Prayer are "Our Father." So Bob is probably sick of hearing me repeat this by now. I said to him, if you have you're a dad, you're a grandpa. If you ever have any trouble figuring out how to play God, just play him as a dad, play him as a father, and he does that very well.
Yeah, I agree.
Also wanted to make sure that Satan let him know that I don't take him as serious as he takes himself. There was a bit of a a sort of a twinkle in the eye and a humor to let him know that as much as he tried, he was never going to really get to me, and that I was always in control. And that was one of the goals of the performance.
Yeah, I like that very much. It was very good because I noticed that. In some ways, I just let Bob go too. I didn't have to direct him too much, but I liked how, even in the first one, how he was like that. It was just this element of kind of looking over his shoulder at Lucifer going, really?
Yeah, I really like that element. It's different than, say, like your classic, like your Charlton Heston portrayal, right? It's a little more, I feel like, which I also like, by the way. I also think Heston's, of course, very talented, but I think there's a lot of like nuance and there's kind of a good nature to it that on my rewatch of the pilot of the first episode really stuck out to me. I thought that was a really cool, probably not the first time that's been in a film. It's the first time I think I've seen it, certainly.
One other thing we should clarify just real quickly is that we keep on referring to the first one as a pilot, and this is the
I know, that's my bad.
In the second episode of the series. Well, that's our plan. There's always a chance Lucifer and the Father could be a short film that got a sequel. You know what I mean? If we can't take this thing, we're hoping to take it further, but if we can't take it any further, this second one is kind of an experiment to see, can we take it further? Because we kind of, the original concept was, the way that a lot of people do movies is or shows rather, they shoot a pilot and then try to get investors to invest a ton of money to, do a series. But a friend that we have named Jared O'Flaherty, little shout out to Jared, who does a great cop show for Redeem TV called Vindication. He had shot a pilot and he did something that I thought was brilliant. He, instead of shopping the pilot around and trying to get people to throw in a ton of money to make the series, he made a second episode himself out of pocket and shopped the 2 episodes around, and the investors then came to him. And I'd even discovered that one of the things that, now the last interview we did, I said this wrong and Bob thought I was saying that we weren't intelligent, but he was just giving me a hard time. I have a friend named Jeff Hollis who is like one of the most sought after editors in the Christian community, and he's a very smart guy. And I was one day during the times that we were having trouble raising money for this thing, I said, why can't we get anybody interested in another one of these given how much they liked the first one? And his reply was, he goes, well, Scott, your show is just 2 guys talking at a table. I'm like, wait a minute, did you think every episode was going to be that? Well, yeah. And I'm like, no, it's not. And I'm like, okay, we need to make this second one because it made me wonder, okay, if a guy as smart as Jeff is thinking that, who else is thinking that? So we gotta show the world that not every episode is what the first one was going to be. So that's kind of what this second one is doing, if that makes any sense.
And I think that's pretty, like, right away when you see the trailer to it, you make a point of showing that there's changes in kind of timeline and in kind of like historical context and things. I mean, like, I feel like Taylor and I, because, we spoke directly to you and you all introduced us to the concept of Lucifer and the Father, we knew, like, that hadn't even occurred to me that someone would think that the whole series was just you and Bob talking, because the way you explained it, you said like, oh, every episode's going to be a different story. It's kind of going to traverse, time and space. I knew that whenever I think about it, it's kind of preloaded into my head. But now I'm thinking, oh, I guess someone could have I can see in retrospect when you say that, how someone could look at this pilot and be like, this is a show. But that never even occurred to me, I don't think. But of course, I had you told me about the concept before.
Right.
As well, I had a question about the sort of production and like like shooting locations and stuff like that. So I know you said you guys are shooting this around the Bend/Deschutes area. Is that correct, of Oregon?
Yeah, we needed a church, of course. And I had gone to a concert at a church called Foundry Church in Bend with some friends of mine, singing family, that this concert in the summer. And I loved that church for the visual side of it. And it was right in downtown Bend, down by all the restaurants and kind of the busy area. But it's just beautiful with the stained glass windows. And I reached out to the contact I had there through the family that had performed there. And they're like, yeah, when do you want to do it? And they let us use it at no charge. It was beautiful. And because we didn't really have a big budget for locations. Yeah. And the other one was, I knew I wanted some kind of a cliff or some kind of big, just rock wall. I even thought there was some piles of volcanic rock like we had shot in the first one, but I wanted something different if we could get it. And when we went out to the location and scouted it a few weeks before, it was like, oh my gosh, this would be beautiful. This would be great. It has lots. In filmmaking, we call the backgrounds that have a lot of elements to them and a lot of character to them. We say it has texture. That location had a lot of texture. A huge juniper tree just off to one side that was nice for shade. We didn't have to do put up a lot of silks like we did in the first one over that dinner table. So yeah, everything just kind of fell into place. Lots of prayer about that, and just felt real blessed that we got some really cool locations. And we didn't have as many locations, of course, this time either. We just had two. And we did some driving around in the Jeep that my buddy had let me borrow with the doctor for the opening credits that I want to try. I have another idea for opening credits too. But yeah, no, it just all came together very quickly. We spent one day at the church and then 2 days out at the cliff location. And then we also used on the same 266-acre place, their apple orchard that they're protecting with a fence. So, and that's where we have the reversal of the doctor and Lucifer and the Father talking as they're observing Joseph going through these trials.
Oh, that's fantastic. And, I was sort of wondering in general, obviously, because, the Pacific Northwest and Oregon in general is just such a diversity of like natural settings and stuff like that. I've been out to visit you, Brian, I think 4 times now. So I'm fairly familiar with Oregon, although I've never been to Bend or Deschutes or even.
Oh, you'd love it.
Oh, no, I'm super excited. In fact, I think you and I, Brian, I think that'll be like the next trip that I go out there. I want to check out that area. But I'm curious too, because, both Brian and I, we checked out the actual Oregon coast last time. Are you guys planning on doing any sort of location scouting for like the coast or even maybe like Eastern Oregon? Because I know there's a lot of like deserts and stuff like that out there. There's just so many natural locations you could choose for.
Yeah. I think there's an Abraham and an Isaac episode where we go into their lives like we did with Joseph, and Eastern Oregon would be great for that kind of environment, wilderness kind of place for sure. Yeah. I haven't even really looked at the rest of the scripts as far as, getting my head wrapped around locations.
Well, I will tell you this. One of the things that I did ask myself is, okay, if God is only blessing us with a trilogy of the other ones that I did, what would I want to do as the third one? And the answer would have to be, it's funny you should mention the desert, Taylor, because if we could only do one more after this one, the one that I would do would be the one that covers Jesus's temptation by Lucifer in the desert. And so the fact that there is desert in the Oregon area, that would be one that would be kind of easy to shoot. So sadly, we don't know what's going to happen. We're just focusing on this one for right now. So,
and if God has his way, he may stay in Virginia.
Yeah.
We're still working on the logistics of that. Remember, Bob, God can look any way he wants.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was going to say, nobody's shooting these kind of scenes in Wisconsin because it would just be like rolling green hills the entire way. There's not that much natural, like, scenic diversity. Brian, do not talk badly about Wisconsin, right? No, I'm kidding. You can, but
that's the Garden of Eden, right? That'll be our Adam and Eve episode.
Yeah. Nourishment and plenty.
It's got some of the best farmland in the world. I mean,
there we go.
No, I'm kidding. But
there we go.
Some of these, I'm kind of looking through the scripts trying to find out, okay, hypothetically, if we had to do one more via crowdfund, and what ones could we do by raising the funds ourselves, and which ones do we absolutely need investors for? And I'm thinking that the Adam and Eve one might be an investor one, because there's just some stuff that we might have to do, like with special effects, because Shawn's really liking where some of the AI, we're using some AI in this new one. I think we might need to use use some AI in order to do the Garden of Eden. So it's
just capture the scope of the garden itself.
Exactly. So that's something I'm not sure I'm not sure that's something we could crowdsource the financing for. So that one might have to be the ones that say, okay, we can only do this one if we get an investor.
That maybe answers my question. We kind of segued into it already. There were 5 additional scripts written. Is that right?
There are 5 additional. I had originally written, for those of you that don't know, there's in order to be considered a mini series or a first season of a streaming show, the minimum requirement is 6 episodes. So I had always decided to outline 6 episodes, and the original concept was this first one. The first one was actually kind of an experiment. We kind of just did the most simplest thing you could, which was God and the devil talking, because I wanted to make sure audiences would accept actors playing them. And then the whole idea would be is, okay, we know where they are today. Let's see how they got here. And all the other episodes were going to be prequels of how they were interacting with Bible stories. And then I had this idea in the back of my head of doing, because I came up with the idea during the pandemic, like I said earlier, I had this idea in the back of my head of God comforting a doctor during the pandemic and telling her about, I came up with that idea during COVID. And then somewhere along the line, Shawn was like, I think we should do some of these where maybe they interact with modern day more. And I was like, it's funny because the one episode that I didn't write actually is kind of more like that. And I revisited that and I realized, what, actually this is the cheapest episode of all the ideas I've come up with because it's only 2 locations. I'm like, this is the one we should make next. So what was the 7th backup episode became episode 2.
So do you have, like, that kind of implies to me, do you have a script that you really like? And I don't need any details about that. It's just like, you feel like it's like too ambitious. Do you have one sitting there that you're like, really like to do that and you just...
Of these ones or of something else?
I meant of this series, but of anything, I suppose.
Of the ones that are written, I think the Jacob and Esau one would be the hardest to shoot because it involves, everything else is all pretty much outdoors. The Jacob and Esau episode involves scenes inside Bible time tents and stuff. So we'd have to, that's another one that would probably need an investor because we would have to be more ambitious with set design, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, you need a whole set.
Yeah, so
I'm curious on
Jacob and Esau, if we had to stop at 6, I don't know if I ever told Shawn this. I think Jacob and Esau would be the one that we would scrap if we had to scrap one of them. But who knows?
I'm curious on that, though, because obviously you talked about getting investors and, funding set design and stuff like that. And obviously you guys would know this definitely more than us. But in the faith-based community, aren't there people that like recreate these kind of things as part of like recreation of biblical stories that you might get? Or do you feel like that's a little bit too like low budget for something that might appear on film?
There are different studios that are actually going up because of shows like the Chosen and other things that are out there. That, in fact, there's a place in Texas called Capernaum Studios that they have permanent Bible time sets, which is pretty cool. But there's other things that we're doing, like we're integrating some AI scenes into even this episode. In the trailer, Scott, we had an AI artist, take the pictures of the baker and of the cupbearer, and we did these short little scenes that you even saw in the trailer when the cupbearer was grabbing the wine and squeezing it into the cup. And then when the guy was getting the birds were eating the bread off the baskets on his head in the trailer.
They're both AI, they're not real.
Yeah, those are both AI shots that we included. So there's ways that we can expand the value of, not the value, but the production quality through AI. Not that we, want to replace everybody and everything in the episodes, but I think it can definitely enrich some elements that we couldn't otherwise do with such low budgets.
Also, AI, it's already here. It's better. My feeling is like for like independent filmmakers and performers like you guys to use it. Like I feel like that's what that should be utilized for, rather than for like Universal to like squeeze actors out of their likeness or something. I feel like
like studio systems or like streaming services using it for supplemental stuff. We obviously don't agree with that, but obviously you guys are on a much smaller scale and you're using it to enhance certain things that are replaced. Essentially,
it's a tool. It really
is. And there are things that I am all for. Like, for example, when I see behind the scenes, I love action films, but when I see behind the scenes of what it costs to crash a car for what's 2 seconds of screen time,
and
the money that it goes through, and I'm like, that is ridiculous. Like there's other things that money could be doing. Well, now with AI, you can just create those sequences in the computer. You don't have all the safety issues. You don't have to spend boatloads of money. I mean, the very first script that Shawn and I wrote together is actually kind of a spy espionage thing. And if we ever get that one off the ground, I am all for using AI to make some of the more, like you were talking about, Brian, maybe some of the overly ambitious scenes that I had that would not be possible on a lower budget, possible with the computer. So one thing that is actually, here's an example of something that's in, you're going to see in Lucifer and the Father. A big part of the cupbearer's dream is that he dreams that he hands the cup that he crushed the wine into to Pharaoh. I knew on our budget, we would never find anything that looked like Pharaoh's palace, and we would never find a costume for a Pharaoh actor that didn't look like a Halloween costume. Okay, that we should create in the computer, and we did. So my friend Nick tried it out, and it came out great.
But, a lot of faith-based projects are going to use those studios in Capernaum. I actually filmed a teaser for another series there. And the day before I arrived, Mel Gibson was there scouting out that location for possibly using it for his sequel to Passion of the Christ. So it's really going to be an opportunity because it's already built. So it's going to save even big budget films an awful lot of money. And they couldn't have been better. They were really great folks to work with.
Yep, I know them personally.
Problem is you have to have the financing to go to that place. So that's
even on a low budget.
Yeah, exactly.
It's actually Brian, Taylor, one thing that we probably should mention is because you guys have been so great about having your crowdfund promoted on your podcast is when I flew back to Boston from Oregon, we still needed to raise $3,500 for the post-production budget. I'm happy to say that as of today, that's down to $2,900.
Fantastic. Very good.
That's awesome.
Thank you so much.
However, there's one thing that we kind of didn't plan on, and that's this. Now, if this doesn't work out, that's life, and we just have to wait because the movie's about waiting, so art is imitating life. Bob, Mr. Shepard here, won Best Actor in a Short Film at the International Christian and Music Festival, and we're very happy. We're very happy that he did. We were an official pick there. Okay, they loved his performance.
Congratulations!
Congratulations.
Actually, I was the nominee, which was still quite an honor. I won other ones, but I didn't. But I was nominated, so I was very happy.
You won a nomination.
I won a nomination. That's right.
Well, anyway.
I mean, a nomination is an honor in itself.
So my point is that we obviously want to put this at the same festivals we did the first one at, but particularly that one because Bob was nominated there. And unfortunately, the late deadline for that one is January 6th. So in a perfect world, we'd like to have this thing edited by January 6th, but it's going to be hard to do that if we can't raise the last of the post-production budgets. So that's the one thing that is kind of a little bit of a time crunch. But hey, if we have to do it next year instead of this year, then that's life. But we'd like to get it into this year's one.
We'll push this out. We promote you guys on every episode. We'll push out a special episode with this, and I'll post around because that would be really cool. Gosh, that's almost January 6th is like here.
Yeah, fortunately, I might have some time to put into it if it all works out, but we'll see.
I'm showing the first one to my men's prayer breakfast group, which has like 40 guys at it this Wednesday morning, and then I'm showing them the trailer for the second one afterwards. And the one thing that I've learned about church people and crowdfunding is this. You have to explain what crowdfunding means to them. I can't tell you how many people will look at the amount of money we're trying to raise and they'll be like, oh, I'm sorry, I don't have that kind of money, but you are in my prayers. Prayers are appreciated, but apparently you didn't hear the words crowdfunding.
It's also not called crowd praying.
Yeah. We need $2,900. That means we're looking for 290 people to donate $10.
The way that you say it is, we need $100 to finish this from 29 people.
Or that too.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's the giving season,
That's right.
Get your Christmas gift money and let's get this together.
That's right.
I tried that. I asked my family, I said, just donate to my crowdfund. Don't give me any gifts. They won't do it.
Oh, you mean that they wanted to give you gifts, not that they were like, no, I'm not donating to your crowdfund.
No, they already donated to the first one, so
I see.
Oh, okay.
I'm hitting a lot of the same crowd again. So is one of the things. So, the experiment with the first one was, would people accept a film where God and the devil were played by actors? This one is to see. Actually, my one sister kind of already proved our second experiment might be working. When she heard we were shooting a second one, she actually said to me, "So wait, are you making more of these?" And I'm like, "That's what we want people to have."
That's the idea.
That is what we want to do. The minute there is a sequel to any movie, everybody always says, is there going to be a third one?
So, and you talked about post-production budget. Now, I'm not super familiar with the, film production, like industry and stuff like that. I mean, obviously both Brian and I are huge film fans, but to the audience at home and frankly to me as well, what sort of things are all included in a post-production budget? I'm curious.
Part of it is just time into it, to be able to devote the time to put it into it. The other is there'll be some fees regarding the AI licensing and some other things that we'll have to do. And so compared to most films, it's not tens of thousands of dollars like a big film budget, but anything's helping to just move it across the line.
Well, actually, I'll tell you, part of the reason why we need this post-production budget is because of a little goof I made on the first one. See, the first movie was me putting together a budget for a film for the first time, and I was so happy that I kept it within a certain amount of money, and then after we were done and we had spent all the money on the production, I realized I didn't account for all the time Shawn was going to spend editing it. So, bless his heart, he did it on weekends, he did it in his spare time, and it came out to about 60 hours worth of editing that he basically did when he could.
Right.
It's one of the reasons
why. But it also took months, and it took months to do just a little bit here and there, and we want to try and get it done.
Shawn has money to live off of and pay his bills. He can edit it right away.
Right. Yeah.
Plus, he's a master at this. He deserves to get paid. So that's what.
It's just a stipend. It helps keep the lights on and devote time to it, basically.
Yeah, of course.
Absolutely. And I'm curious too. Obviously, talk about the crowdfund. Is there a specific crowdfund for the post production, or is it the general Lucifer and the Father crowdfund?
It's the Lucifer and the Father sequel. We've kept the same. GoFundMe is one of the only crowdfunds that doesn't give you a limited amount of time. So that's why we kept that one. Right. We raised the funds for the first one on Indiegogo, and that gives you a 60-day limit. We raised the first $2,000 for the second one on Indiegogo as well, but they don't let you do a second crowdfund for the exact same thing. So I was looking at other things, and that's when I found out that GoFundMe doesn't give you a time limit. You can keep it going. So, and funny thing is, if you look at the GoFundMe, it says that we've only raised about $2,000. That's because I'm not going to mention who it is here, but we actually had a very generous donator who gave a very generous sum, which I won't mention either, but she decided to give it to us directly, not through the crowdfund. So that's one of the reasons why the crowdfund doesn't look like it's working as well as it did, because a lot of people gave to us offline.
No, that's very good, because we've usually been updating on the end of the pluggables on how much the crowdfund is doing, but we didn't realize there were some private donations as well. Not that we're obviously going to disclose all this to the audience necessarily, but at the same time, that's good to hear you guys are also getting some extra money that isn't reflected in the crowdfund either.
Exactly, yes.
Well, I don't know if we want to mention this, Scott, but there is the opportunity if someone donates over a certain amount. We were offering a co-producer credit as well. So
here are the things. You donate to the movie at all, you're in the very long list of special thanks that we do.
There's the special thanks, and then there's the special thank.
And there's the VIP donation, which is if you do $100, you are on the list of people that gets a one-time link to see the movie as soon as it's done. Meaning you get a link, you punch in a code, you can watch it once, and then the code won't work again after that. And then if you give us more than $1,000, you get a co-producer credit.
Okay. We'll start including that in our plug. You probably told me that at the time.
I might have. I'm not sure. Brian, Taylor, I'm going to live with you guys here. A lot of stuff that I've said here, Bob and Shawn will attest to the fact that I'm like a broken record with. So I've lost track of who I've told what.
I mean, our podcasts and millennials are old. We're getting old. Our memories are bad. We're always talking about that, Brian.
Kind of going to broader, you all have been in the industry for a long time and you've all worked a lot. And so I'm always really interested in that. So I know, Scott, you mentioned your first film with Shawn was kind of an espionage spy thriller adjacent.
First we wrote together. It hasn't been made.
You wrote together. I've kind of gathered. So you're a fan of kind of a lot of genre-based films, which is a big thing that we talk about.
I'm a big fan of movies that make you think. Like I just saw the third Benoit Blanc film, Wake Up Dead Man. It's probably the best of the Knives Out trilogy, in my opinion.
I have not seen Wake Up Dead Man yet, but I love the Knives Out.
It'll be on Netflix on December 12th. And I got to tell you, it centers around a character who's a priest. And Shawn, Bob, I forgot to tell you this. I've never seen a mainstream film that has a priest character speaking so much spiritual truth. The character sounds like an evangelical, and they don't make fun of him. They don't mock him or anything like that. I mean, Benoit Blanc says that he's an atheist, but that's most detectives are. So in genres like this, but I like movies. Let's put it this way: I like movies that make you think. Let's put it that way. And And because my vocation is as a magician entertainer, and I'm constantly trying to fool an audience, I said this to Jeffrey Deaver, who wrote The Bone Collector once. He was doing a book signing in Quincy, and he had just written a book called The Vanished Man about a magician, and I was hired to perform at his book signing. And we were talking afterwards, and this was after I'd written my first attempt at a screenplay. And I said to him, I gather that doing a story with a surprise ending is like doing a magic trick. You have what you think, what the audience thinks is happening, and then the surprise you're going to reveal. And he totally agreed. So that was one of my proud moments, having a New York Times best-selling mystery author agree with my analysis. I like movies that are kind of magic tricks, so to speak, and that's one of the reasons why I like the Knives Out films, because just when you think you know what's going on, Rian Johnson puts a twist, and it turns out you don't know what's going on.
Or Back to the Future, as I see behind you.
Oh yeah. Well, time travel movies are thinking movies as well.
So that's initially what I was kind of getting at. Have you guys ever done like a science fiction, or would you do a science fiction based kind of faith-based film? Is that a thing that you've ever considered? Yeah. Or something more genre-y, more in the genre realm?
Well, I mean, it's probably more of what we've written. I have a post-apocalyptic film that I wrote that I finished. I have a creature feature one called Crawdaddy that I wrote. It's a fun ride of a film. And then I wrote kind of a supernatural sci-fi about people think it's aliens, people think it's supernatural, or think it's Indian spirit guides. It keeps a mystery flowing to the whole thing of that. So, and I've probably written some. I've probably 2 or 3 dozen screenplays that I've written, and Scott that I helped write. The one that he's talking about was kind of I don't know, it's a sci-fi, but there was some science involved in it about cloning. The first one, the Twin Master that you and I worked on.
It was genetic stuff that connected to World War II. I kind of likened it to kind of maybe like National Treasure. It was kind of like mixing some real history with a fictitious conspiracy theory. The first script that we wrote together was called The Twin Master. In fact, the reason Shawn was recommended to take a look at it is because he is a twin. I was talking to Barry Bowen, and he said, you're writing a Christian spy thriller that has to do with twins. You know, I know a director who is a twin, and that's what brought us together in the first place. And we spent years trying to get that made, and then from the first podcast what happened with Shawn's son, and I was directing the play version of The Reconciler at the time, and we ended up making that instead. That's what happened there. So
Robert, you were in National Treasure, right? Or you were an extra? Was that correct?
I was an extra. If you look closely, you can see me going up the steps as they're getting ready to do the National Archive building. So if you look close, I'm heading up the stairs. But I love that movie. I can watch that movie over and over.
Absolutely.
I've actually worked as an extra in about 40 movies, so we could start a whole, series of that.
Truly.
Yeah. No, absolutely. No, I remember going through some of your old credits, and I'm like, I've seen half your movies, Robert. It's crazy. I'm like, I didn't go back to some of them.
As an extra on a film I was in the John Travolta and Robert Duvall movie, A Civil Action, and it was a scene in Fenway Park that ultimately got cut from the film. I was part of the fake crowd in the middle of winter. We had to hide our winter jackets under our chairs because the original finale of the film was Travolta confronting Duvall at a baseball game, but they decided not to use it. And so we're the crowd behind Travolta and Duvall cheering for an empty baseball field covered in flakes of snow with a teamster holding up a big X going, "I'm the ball game. Look right here."
What a gig.
That was my first experience on a movie set. And, you were Brian, real quickly, you were asking about, what are the movies and stuff that we like and what things that we can make. I don't think I've ever told Shawn or Bob this. My very first attempt at a screenplay in my 20s was a movie called Brothers of the Groom, which in one sentence is Die Hard at a wedding reception, but with more characters.
Okay.
Lots of explosions. But anyway.
That sounds kind of incredible. Really into action films and then creature features. That's like my thing. That's my wheelhouse.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I wrote Crawdaddy back in 2008, I think. And I've had it in front of Sony Pictures. I've had it in front of a few others. And actually, there's a group up in BC right now they're very close to optioning it. So we'll see. You might.
I hope so. I would really like to see that.
Yeah, I mean, they have their own directors and stuff. It's kind of like what I did with the Justice movie that got made in 2017, I think, that had Stephen Lang in it as the mayor and such.
We talked about that when we were on here the first time.
Yeah, but yes. I sold the screenplay to that because I was working on Out of the Darkness at the time. So, but I don't mind selling my screenplays, not at all.
Do you have some screenplays that like you kind of that when you're writing it, you're like, this is one I'll sell to someone, and then you have like ones that maybe you're like, I'm going to hold on to this for me. Is that a thing you think about at all?
I used to probably. I've written so many to this point to where, 6 of them have gotten made in the movies, but I have 2 or 3 dozen other bloating, either finished or semi-finished screenplays that are ideas that just come to me. So I don't know. I used to have in fact, I have a sci-fi that I wrote called Hereafter that's about self-induced near-death experiences. It kind of takes flatliners to the next level. And, that one, I haven't had a guy who was a filmmaker for a while that he was just like, Shawn, do not sell the screenplay. You have to make this movie. I would even sell that one now because you kind of move on mentally.
Right.
Once you've sold a few and made a few, you just mature through it, I guess you could say.
Sure.
And you're just like, it's just a business. It's show business for a reason. So yeah, I'm happy for the right price to sell my screenplays to people because I can always make more and ideas are always still coming to me.
For the first 5 years that Shawn and I knew each other, I don't know how he managed to put up with me, but when we were talking about that other film, The Twin Master, there were certain people that had to be in it. It had to be a certain way. I was so stubborn. Now here we are 13 years later, the darn thing is still not made. And I said to Shawn, you know what? If we have to do it all in AI, if we have to sell the script and have some other people make it, that is better than it just living rent-free in my head for the rest of my life.
Sitting on a shelf. Yep.
Yeah, we're sitting on a shelf. It's not doing anybody any good sitting on a shelf or living rent-free in my head. So eventually you got to let go of some of this stuff. Otherwise, the thing's never
if nothing else, then for your own well-being. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the last thing you want to do is have a project be in production hell, for lack of a better term. Yeah. But also, Brian, I know talk about film. Obviously, I know you, and like I said, we're both big film fans. But I know you are, and you had a couple scripts, and like you were telling me you're moving to Portland, and you were so excited, and you were like, oh, it's going to be near Vancouver. But Brian, it's the wrong Vancouver. I think you're now just realizing this.
I know. It was a terrible moment for me. It was devastating. I moved all the way out here. So actually, that's not true. But
I'm joking.
The Midwest. Well, but I have a similar experience that is true, which is that I'm from the Midwest. I had never been on the coast, never been on the East Coast. I've never been on the West Coast. But you hear people say the West Coast in movies, right? And I'm from like tiny town, like a farming town in Wisconsin. I was like, oh, I'm moving to the West Coast. It's going to be sunny and warm all the time, and I'm going to get really tan. I pack all my stuff up, and I land in Portland, and I'm here for about 3 days, and I go, oh.
Well, Brian, you still got tan somehow. You did it though.
Oh, well, thank you.
Summers.
Yes. I've come around on the Portland weather, but boy, that first year was a little shocking.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, it rains in the winter. That's for sure.
Well, that's the thing, Brian. I'm curious because talk about obviously that amazing Portland weather, but I know a few years ago you guys got hit by like a massive heat wave. When was that?
It was 2022, 2023. I forget. So the thing, I love the heat wave. I have like lizard blood. I don't know. It doesn't bother me, but I know it's bad. I think what's that 2022? I think when it was like 110 degrees.
Yeah. Fortunately, in Central Oregon, it's much drier and arid. And we actually, when you guys have I grew up in Portland, but when you have those kind of temperatures, it's like 10 degrees cooler and drier in Central Oregon, which I'm like, ha ha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The whole scope of production has just changed so much. And it's, the dynamics of making a movie have gotten easier from the technical side, but I think even more so because everybody, I've run into people where they go, oh, you direct movies? You must be rich. And it's like, I don't hardly make a dime off I've lost money pretty much on stuff. And because for indie films, it's more of a love of the art to make them, to be honest. And so but the cool thing about indie films is that you're able to make the films that you feel compelled and passionate to make. When you have big, huge budgets, there's egos, there's a lot involved. And you hear about that coming out of Hollywood of these filmmakers that are basically, they don't get to do the ending they want, or they don't get to do this or that because it's all dictated by the algorithms and by, what the executives who've never made a movie in their life think, how movies should be made. So, that's part of the beauty of us indie filmmakers is we get to make the movies we want to make. If they hit, great. But 90% of them don't, but they do reach an audience. And I'm not saying, I don't see, a few dollars here and there off my movies, but through, streaming or whatever, but it's hardly anything at all.
Yeah, people don't get into the arts for the money. And if you are getting into the arts or creative endeavors for the money, good luck. Yeah. I'll just say that. Yeah. We're of course millionaires from this podcast, Brian, so we're wanting to talk.
Yeah, independently wealthy podcastiers.
Taylor, Brian, you want to know a little secret about particularly especially Christian independent filmmaking. I heard this from a reliable source, a very prolific screenwriter that worked for a Christian film company. And I don't want to badmouth anybody here, but this is what he told me. You obviously know, if we refer back to your review of our first film, The Reconciler, how you and some other reviewers feel about certain Christian. I mean, there's a whole podcast called God Awful Movies that rips apart more Christian films than ours. Well, I'll tell you a little secret about the faith-based film industry. It kind of doesn't exist in a way. Someone once told me that the Christian film industry is basically a whole bunch of independent filmmakers kind of making their own things and all using investors. And the one thing that is all over the place is whoever is controlling the money dictates what they want, and the people controlling the money aren't always the most creative or most experienced filmmakers. And they will literally say stuff like, do the story this way or I'm pulling the funding. So the reason why some faith-based films are so bad is because that happened.
And, you know, obviously, so much tea has been spilled by The Reconciler, of course, from creators much bigger than ours, including ones with millions of YouTube followers, one I will not name off the top of my head. I'm just going to be real here. But, you know, say what you want about, you know, especially your movies, but, like, they are, like, fascinating. Like, straight up, I recommend The Reconciler to almost every new person I meet. I'm not even kidding. I'm like, you have to watch this movie. It's incredible, like, in almost every way. It's like, it goes nowhere where you'd expect, especially by the end. It is a genuinely very enjoyable movie, Brian. I know you and I both agree with that.
Well, and it's also, I think it's, you know, we talked about this off mic, you know, when we weren't recording. There should streams of, like, culture and art that aren't just the default, right? That aren't just a Marvel movie, that if you have something you care about and you're passionate about, that you can see represented. So you guys were saying you don't really make any money doing it. You especially, I mean, I don't think you ever have made a ton of money doing anything like that, anything outside of the mainstream, but probably even less now, right? Yeah. With everything getting streaming and everything so optimized. But like something that someone has put in the time independently to make like that, like that's a mark of like true craftsmanship and I think love of craft. And I think in film in general, and probably just in music, Taylor and I have been in some bands, you know, before we moved separately, you know, when we like lived near each other, and kind of any field, what you see is that there's like now this really popular default that just is kind of okay and everyone likes it and everyone watches it. And there needs to be these small little streams, these little kind of subsidiary streams where other people can find what they want, that they feel represented by. That isn't, and there's nothing wrong with like Marvel movies or whatever, but do you know what I mean? Something that was made by like a small group of people to do something they care about and that they want to say and a story they want to tell. It makes me very sad that there aren't as many movies like that as there were, probably. Certainly not in the 90s, but even in the last 20 years, I think you see less of that kind of lower and middle class of filmmaking. And anyone that's doing that, I want to support in any way I can, because it's a thing that I think is truly important.
I think the good news is there's probably more streaming opportunities now than there has ever been. The bad news is there is so many movies out there that it's hard to find, you know, a niche for your movie. But getting it distributed, I think is maybe easier than it used to be, because there's so many options now compared to a few years ago even.
Oh, absolutely. I can't remember if this was on mic or off mic, but I was talking about the Tubi movies and stuff like that, right? The, you know, what was it? African American Psycho and a lot of those other movies that sort of get brought into the, you know, popular consciousness from, you know, memes and Instagram and like YouTube shorts and all that. But like those movies have like literally no budget. Like those movies are probably made for, you know, $40,000, $50,000, were shot in a couple days. And, you know, it's one of those things where like you kind of just need at this point, like a really like just prominent, like very funny moment or scene to have your entire hour and a half movie or whatever that once again was made for like $50,000 to really get out there at this point. So, and obviously this would not be for Lucifer and The Father, because obviously it's a very serious, you know, production and has a lot of allegorical stuff and, you know, lessons and stuff like that. But would you guys ever be interested in, and not once again cynically, right, but making a movie that's kind of out there and making a scene to kind of go viral? Do you think that would do like good for you guys, or is that not something you're interested in at all? Are you trying to be more traditional with the way that you make your movies and sort of spread your message and stuff like that? I'm curious.
I don't think like that.
Yeah.
Oh no, totally. As you shouldn't, but at the same time, it's something to think about, right? Because social media and, you know, marketing in general is just so much different than it used to be.
I think the fact that you don't think like that is a testament to the product that you're making, ultimately.
Absolutely, 100%. I wasn't saying you guys should be doing that, but that was like a thought process in my head.
If someone came to me, and said, "Hey, take a look at this. What do you think?" You know, and I'd be like, "Okay." You know?
Yeah.
Let me grab my red camera and let's go
no,
out and
absolutely.
do it.
Speaking of red camera, because I can't remember which episode or interview we talked about it, but the red camera, like you have a pretty state of the art like filming equipment, especially for these kind of productions. Like the red camera is a pretty expensive camera.
Yeah. I mean, mine's a little older one, but it holds up against some of the better cameras even now. But the funny thing about that one is that I bought that because of a government project that I had where I was doing all these training videos for this agency, and they ended up not finishing or getting close to finishing the job. And they're like, Shawn, we got to pay you everything we owe you in this contract by December 31st.
Yeah.
It's like, it's like $80,000, and I'm or 60 or whatever it was. And I was just like, oh, okay. And so I was like, what do I do with this? Because I didn't want to necessarily show, that much income all right at the end of the year.
Right.
And so, that's how I bought my red camera. But I always knew in the back of my head that I wanted to use it to make movies. So, a lot of my gear and all that came actually from my corporate projects, but always with the idea to put it towards making films, short films and feature films, which is what I did exactly.
Do any of the three of you, do any of you have a film memory for you that stands out in your head, being like the thing where you were like, that's the type of story I'd like to tell, or that's the thing something that was really impactful for you as an actor or as a filmmaker?
I know for me, I'm Gen X, I'm mid-50s right now. So, a lot of people my age are like, Star Wars. But the movie that really did it for me, where I was able to wrap my head around going, I love this movie and I would love to make movies like this. Well, same filmmaker though, Raiders of the Lost Ark. That was it for me. I was just like, that's what I want to do. I want to make movies that tell very, very cool stories, wrap in the audience, but yet have kind of an underlying truth to it, I guess you could say.
Very human characters, like even with all the wackiness. Yeah,
and the humor. I love the humor in it. The moments of the gun and the whip and the
all the stuff with Marion.
Yeah, exactly. So to me, it was probably Raiders.
Well, of course, for me, it was probably working in Spielberg's Lincoln, although I only had one scene, but it was incredible. I've never seen such professionalism in my life. His crew had been with him for years, and they all knew what each other was thinking. And one time, one of the lighting directors said, okay, guys, we're going to set this up like we did for Munich. And they all knew what he was
talking about. They all knew right what that meant.
They all knew what he was talking about. He didn't have to explain a thing. The costuming was incredible. And of course, he never said a word to me, but I was inches away from Daniel Day-Lewis, and we probably did about 25 takes. But the bottom line was, to be such a big name, Mr. Spielberg could not have been more kind. He was incredibly kind. He was thoughtful, and certainly that has been a high point. Not that I don't love these guys and what we've been doing, but it was a pretty heady experience for sure for a country boy from the Ozarks.
When you're working with a team that's that tight-knit and at that high profile, do you feel any stress from that, or does it feel like kind of relaxing?
Well, I was talking about that the other day with someone, and I think it took me many years of working to be to the point that I was able to be much controlled and not overly nervous. If this opportunity had happened earlier on in my career, I really don't know if I would have handled it as well. But having worked in every kind of film you can think of for years and years and years, I think that gave me the background that I needed to do. And one thing that helped me is, even though I was a principal, I did not have a stand-in that day. So I was on set when they were setting up the lights, and it helped me get comfortable with the sets, the movement. So all of that really worked very well for me too.
Speaking of, working with a crew and all that, Shawn, do you typically work with the similar crews on most of your productions as well? Do you have that kind of like tight-knit production schedule and, production crew and all that?
Yeah, to a degree. My oldest son actually is kind of my right-hand man. Cool. And helps a lot, Joshua, and he knows, what I need, and he'll direct, people below him. Is kind of he's an AD to a degree too. So, And then I haven't really stuck with any DP in particular. In fact, on some projects, I've been my own DP as well. I mean, they're so small. My wife was a production designer on 2 of my movies. She has a very artsy background and touch and eye. So I could and she knows me, of course. So, I could rely on her to be in charge of essentially everything in front of the camera on 2 feature films. And then the first, Lucifer and The Father, she was right there helping as well. And then there have been just crew people that I have cycled through. I was a unit production manager on 2 other films for Reconciler, and there are people that I would call on and liked that I knew I wanted to bring on to other films. So yeah, I mean, you do develop a family feeling and atmosphere, and to have people that you can trust and be consistent is a big deal.
Awesome. Absolutely. And if I were to ask a crew just real quick, are you ever going to bring back the very muscular pastor that was in, I think it was The Reconciler, and I can't remember what that movie was, but the one about the true crime thing? Because I remember we were talking about that, and I just don't know how that guy got so muscular, but he has to come back. Like,
you're talking about Aaron/Xander, depending on.
Yeah.
Yes, I believe so.
He was a military dad and reconciler, and then he was the sheriff.
Yep. Yes. That's it. Yep. That's the guy.
Yeah. He's also the lead in a movie I'm still editing. We shot a few years ago. It's called The Narrow Road, and it's an action kind of movie, but it's also very layered because the main character, he plays the main character, and he's in the U.S. He owns a gym, of course. and he's just kind of this gentle giant. When you first get to know him you're like, oh, this is like, he's impeccable. But then his past catches up with him in the city that he's moved to. And you come to find out he was in with some bad people, Russian mafia, had a child with a woman. And anyway, it's cool because it all kind of comes out, and then he has to reckon with his past. He ends up being, at the beginning, he goes to church. He's, again, just portrayed as this big, muscular, gentle giant, but he gets almost sucked back into that world and has to kind of pull himself out. Do I really believe what I come to believe now, or do I just turn on all that and go back into that world? So it's kind of a cool story. But yeah, we're working on that. I would hope we can get that released in the next couple of years. It's going to take some AI, actually. I got a little overambitious, being a super low budget movie.
That's good.
With car chases and that kind of thing. And
John,
what we ended up with was not very good.
But Shawn let me watch the rough cut. That's one of the beauty parts of being inside the inner circle, so to speak. And it was very good. He's right. It does need some post-production work, but it is a very good movie. It's the only film that Shawn has ever shot that I'm not in, that I've been wanting. I keep asking him, when is it coming out?
There is a trailer to it, actually. If you look at The Narrow Road, and I think it's on YouTube.
We will post that with this episode.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. That'd be great. I'd love to.
Yeah, we'll post. I know you've got some other things. We're going to push the GoFundMe and any upcoming things that you guys ever want to show off or thing. And then I just want to backtrack a little bit. Scott, I just wanted to get you on that last question. I was wondering if you had a formative film viewing experience, like something you saw where you knew that you wanted to make movies, or something that you felt really reflected, the feelings that you want your movies to, give people.
Well, I can tell you one thing. I think the movie that made me decide that I could write a film that could pull like a misdirect on an audience was The Sting. And that film was made 5 years before I was born, so I saw it when I was a young kid. But it's what I was talking about before, about a movie kind of being a magic trick. That's the perfect example of that. A movie about con men, and for those of you who haven't seen it, you get to the end and you find out something isn't what you thought it was. But we'll just leave it at that. As far as what Bob was talking about a moment on a set, is that really happened on The Reconciler. I think it was either day 1 or day 2 of shooting the basement scenes, and I found myself almost coming to tears because I couldn't believe we were actually making a movie that I had come up with the idea for. And Jordan, who played James in the movie, he was just like, "Scott, are you all right?" And I'm like, "I just can't believe we're here." And he hugged me, and it was a moment that it was just because I'd been chasing the idea of a movie for so long, so I just kind of had a moment on the set of The Reconciler.
like writing kind of before then? Had you been doing other writing jobs and things?
I'd written a ton of skits and plays for my church at that point. I think The Reconciler was the fourth play I did that I wrote for my church that was either based on someone else's material or original. I actually did a stage play adaptation of a film called Mercy Streets that was a Christian film. And then after that, I started writing plays. And as I mentioned before, if someone had told me the play that was going to be my screenwriting debut was The Reconciler, I wouldn't have believed them because it was kind of a filler play. It wasn't really kind of one that I was at the time really in love with, if that means anything. It's also one of the reasons why Shawn added that whole storyline with Laurie, because it was only a 45-minute to an hour play when we did it, because that's the attention span church people have. Truthfully, most of our Easter cantatas at the church that I still attend were about that long. So the Twin Master that Shawn and I wrote together, that was a play first, and I'll never forget the day Shawn called me up and said that he watched the play and he said he thought it would make a great movie, and I wrote the first draft, and that's the very first time that we realized that we were the strength to each other's weaknesses, if that makes any sense when it comes to how we write a script. I've often used the comparison that I'm a Dan Aykroyd writer. Dan Aykroyd's two big claims to fame as far as a writer is he's the creator of the Blues Brothers and Ghostbusters. Everybody knows that. But if you look at the credits of both films, you'll notice that Harold Ramis is credited as co-writer of Ghostbusters, and John Landis, the director of Blues Brothers, is credited with co-writing it with Dan Aykroyd, because Dan Aykroyd actually wrote the first draft of those scripts, and then Harold Ramis or John Landis cleaned them up and turned them into a shootable screenplay. I'm a little bit more of a idea man rather than an expert on making dialogue flow, but that's Shawn's area of expertise, is the finesse of dialogue flowing. But I think,
and I'm sure you know this story about how Landis received first draft of Aykroyd's initial Blues Brothers screenplay, where he had wrapped it in a phone book, kind of making a joke out of massive. You know, every character.
I remember hearing the story. He didn't know what a screenplay looked like. The first draft was like enormous.
Yeah.
At least I didn't do that to Shawn.
Not yet.
Yeah, there's always time.
Unlike Mr. Aykroyd, I actually did a little research on what a screenplay was supposed to look like before I did my first attempt. So.
This is actually first two show scripts, a series called 3 out of 5 that Scott also created that I've been rewriting. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
That's what, it's funny you should mention that, John. Brian, I don't know which one of you said it, but one of you said, are there some scripts that you would want to do yourself and there are some that you would want to like sell off or whatever? I like the idea of 3 out of 5. 3 out of 5 was an idea that I had. I can't explain why, but 3 out of 5 is an idea that I would sell to somebody else to make in a second if it meant that I could, kind of like how Quentin Tarantino sold his True Romance so that he could make Reservoir Dogs, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah.
Shawn's been telling me for years he loves 3 out of 5. And there was a point about talking about making animated. We've talked about making it an AI. The truth is, I've told Shawn, we can make 3 out of 5 any way you want. You're not going to get any pushback from me, 3 out of 5 has to be made this way with these actors. As a matter of fact, I think 3 out of 5 would be the one idea that would get made that I would even be okay if I wasn't in it, which is a rarity for me because normally...
The first 4 episodes right here.
Oh, wow.
They're hour-long, or they're 40 to 50-minute episodes. So.
Is it kind of a comedy? Just because you said it would be animated potentially.
Yeah, it's another detective. It's cool. There's the son of the detective has some special abilities, which I won't get into too much, but they help in the whole detective process. And then it's and the first big case that they take is called the smoke and mirrors killer, right? So yeah, I'm rewriting it.
Kind of like, say, like your take on kind of the police procedural, the gritty police procedural thing, kind of.
In some ways. And so what I wanted to do was I wanted to create exciting and maybe even shocking without having to be overly gory or overly disgusting, if that makes any sense. Like, for example, most people who do stories about serial killers, they can be very grisly, let's be honest here. And the challenge that I came up with for myself was, okay, how do I do a serial killer that is disturbing and clearly an evil person without making it grisly or gory? So the smoke and mirrors killer, his modus operandi is he ties people up in their car and in their garages and they suffocate from carbon monoxide poisoning, but he positions all the mirrors in the car so they're looking at themselves.
So they have to watch watch themselves. Oof,
yeah,
that's rough.
But these are people he feels deserves it. So
okay,
yeah. So there's no blood, there's no strangling, but you got to admit that scenario.
That's pretty creepy. That's a good.
Yeah, no, yeah.
But it's creepy with no gore. It's creepy with no gore.
Yeah, I like that.
That kind of suffocation takes a long time. That's very mentally and psychologically terrifying. I get it.
At one point, I thought I would play that character, but I don't care. If we get 3 out of 5 made in any way, it's fine. I even told Shawn when he was talking about all the AI stuff. I said, Shawn, if you want to try a completely AI project and you need an idea to burn, take 3 out of 5.
But having seen your portrayal of Lucifer, which truly it's like you're a lot of fun to watch in like villain roles, I think it would be really fun to see you playing like a serial killer. Like that would be.
I will tell you real quick. Do you want to know why the show is called 3 out of 5? Shawn, is it okay if I share this?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's about a police detective who's like a 4th generation. He was a 4th generation like cop or whatever. All of his ancestors were cops before him, and he had a son who was very gifted, like very high IQ, skipped a couple grades, stuff like that. And it was crystal clear this guy wasn't going to be a police officer, but because he was a younger kid in school, he was kind of a target for bullies. And one day a bully does something horrific to him, and this actually is one of the mysteries throughout the show, is who actually did this and why did it happen. The poor kid's drink was spiked at his lunch with some cleaner, and he almost got poisoned. And the poison reaction basically killed every taste bud on his tongue and made it so that he can't smell anything. So he's got no sense of smell and he's got no sense of taste. But here's where the semi-sci-fi comes in. In a similar way to how blind people sense a heightened awareness in their other senses when they go blind, something similar happens to this kid. His eyesight, his hearing, and his touch like multiplied tenfold. So he can read something from across the room. He's basically almost like a human radar. He can if he's at a crime scene with his father, he could put his hand on a painting and he knows there's a safe behind it just by feeling it. The idea was to kind of turn the blind person with enhanced senses the other way around.
Right. I hope we get to see some of these projects because these all sound really cool.
Cool.
Yeah, it's been fun, but I have to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning.
All right.
Well, I have to get up at 5:30.
Oh, golly.
Oof. Sorry, guys.
No,
it's all good.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah.
It was fun.
It was.
We
it was
appreciate it a lot.
absolutely fantastic. We really appreciate you taking all this time. We've been talking for well over an hour and a half at this point. You gave us a lot more time than we expected, so we really do appreciate that.
Well, pick and choose what you want to use for your 40 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, take care, guys. God bless. Have a great
All
day.
right. Take care, and thanks again.
We'll talk. We'll be in touch, of course. Thank you.
Absolutely. 100%.
Take care, guys.
All right, cool. So to the audience at home, obviously we talked quite a bit with Scott, Shawn, and Robert. They were great people to talk to as always. They gave lots of great insight. Of course, we're very excited to see more from Lucifer and the Father and their other content. And you know what? Obviously, we end the episode usually with our pluggables. So you can follow us and subscribe to us on both our YouTube and our Spotify channel, where we are uploading every episode simultaneously to both platforms. And as well as always, as we just talked about to the guys, please donate to the Lucifer and the Father campaign. Of course, Scott, Shawn, and Robert are creating a fantastic series and even more series that we're just learning for the very first time on this episode here.
Listen to how cool they are. They have all these cool ideas. They're nice guys. They need help making these ideas happen. Did you hear how good this episode just was?
Absolutely. As we always say, we will match those donations because, of course, we want Scott, Shawn, and Robert's dreams to even become more of a reality than they already are. And holy, are they coming together with their projects. So, of course, we're very excited.
And again, the reason this interview is happening now is because the official trailer for the second episode of Lucifer and the Father is available. It is up on YouTube now. If you look up Lucifer and the Father trailer, that will show up on YouTube. They're done with principal filming. They are in post-production. So it is happening. And again, you can go on YouTube. You can watch the first episode of Lucifer and the Father, which is, as they said, like their proof of concept. But look at the new trailer. I think you'll be pretty impressed by how ambitious it looks.
Absolutely. And like I said, to send us a YouTube comment, send us an email just showing us that you donate, and we will, within good reason, match those donations about $20-25. Like, seriously, they're just cool guys in general. We want to see more of their dreams to become a reality. And Brian...
Oh, the Narrow Road trailer is also on YouTube.
I did look that up. I only found the Jacob Elordi movie that came out 6 months ago called almost the same thing. So you'll have to send that to me because I'm like, wait, they made a Jacob Elordi movie? And I was like,
Jacob Elordi.
If that was the case, we definitely would.
And they just downplay it. They don't even mention it. They're like, oh yeah, that movie I did.
Oh, and then, speaking of people who are fighting the good fight, of course, we always talk about Luigi Mangione and his defense fund. The story that just came out as of recording today about that is Luigi and his defense team are rightfully trying to strike evidence that were gathered before he was Mirandized, such as the quote-unquote physical evidence and the quote-unquote manifesto and writings and bullets and whatever, etc., right? But at the same time, there's a good legal precedent for that not being included if that exists, which once again, we are highly skeptical if that evidence exists in the first place. But technically they are saying that, so we do have to prepare for that. And of course, his legal team are more than prepared to challenge whatever. They can get struck off from the record because, like I said, that was done without Mirandizing him, so who knows how valid that is. And also, I had also heard that they are going to play the McDonald's worker call-in to the police. Talk about AI. I think that's fucking AI. I don't believe that's fucking thing.
I think that they found him using AI facial recognition.
Oh, for sure, 100%. Absolutely, that was the case. And, we talk about AI in general. Now, of course, as we talked about with Scott, Shawn, and Robert, it should be used for creative purposes, especially for smaller budgets. We definitely understand there's creative limitations. But the police and the government and large corporations should not be using AI. Screw that.
Well, let me be very clear, because I've been very outspoken about my feelings about AI. I personally, Scott knows this because we're like Facebook friends, I don't like AI. I don't like it in art. I wish that they didn't have to use AI to make those scenes happen.
Oh,
but I feel like realistically for this prediction and the timeline they're working at, they probably do have to do the things they want to do. It's either change the stories that they want to tell or use AI. I don't love it, but as I said in the interview, the technology's already here. Like, you don't put the genie back in the bottle, but like, if people are going to be using those tools, I would hope that it's independent filmmakers who are maybe have a little more scruple to them than, say, was that Paramount that was doing AI capture of actors' images so they could trademark them? Who was that?
I know who you're talking about. I'm going to guess that was WB, but I could be wrong about that. That was probably Zaslav.
There's no level of artificial intelligence that the police forces and the military and the government should be able to use as evidence of a crime. That is insane. The point of it, the final matter is Luigi is being held. He was charged as a terrorist. They had him up to be executed on trumped up charges that they just don't have any basis for. They picked a guy out and said, this guy fits the profile we need. It's him. And they were going to kill him. And if they can do it to him, they can do it to you. That's why you need to care about this. It's not like because he's hot, and it's not because you, although you should hate health insurance CEOs, obviously, but that's not even ultimately why you should support Luigi. You should support Luigi because he is an innocent man at this point. There is no evidence connecting him solidly to that crime, and they're going to kill him.
No, absolutely. And the fact that at least the New York State government have dropped several of the most severe charges shows that they don't have that much evidence, because if they did, they would throw everything they could possibly. They would catch it for loitering or something.
We would all know about it if they had all this evidence, because they'd want to push back against the support Luigi gets unequivocally. They don't have that evidence. It doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist. So, just like with Lucifer and The Father, we want to support Luigi as much as we can. Both Brian and I have donated to the crowdfund, but I'm going to put it in the episode description as I always do. And like I said, just like with Lucifer and The Father, just donate to it. Send us an email, send us YouTube comments showing us that you donated, and we will, within good reason, about $25 match those donations, because of course we want Luigi to have the best possible trial. And speaking of people, just like with Lucifer and The Father and the biblical stories and Luigi, people who have had trials and tribulations, our trials and tribulations that nobody has donated or subscribed to our Patreon yet. Please, everybody, subscribe to our Patreon. We're cool people. We had just 3 cool dudes on the show right now who gave us an hour and a half of their time talking to us. We're coming up. We have great content to give. As I always say with the tier that we're always talking about, the $5 tier, it's you get every episode up to 48, or you get every episode 48 hours early. That's 2 to 4 episodes per month, because we always say the first 48 hours are most important. Just like with Scott's new show, or his new idea, 3 to 5, you know what? The first 48, they got to find that smoke and mirrors killer real quick. They got 48 hours to do it before another victim shows up. And, if you listen to this podcast, you could figure out who he is before he gets his next victim. Because, like I said, first 48 hours is the most important.
I was pretty impressed by what a creepy setup for a serial killer. Because to be honest, I was kind of like, oh, this isn't really going to be that creepy, because I just didn't see Scott going there, And he hit me with that, and I was like, God, that's pretty messed up.
Oh, yeah. Anything with a very prolonged, torturous death, that's automatically, scary. Obviously stuff like Jason Voorhees and, Freddy Krueger, where they just, cut up people in, 30 seconds is scary. But suffocation takes, minutes, especially something like smoke inhalation or, gas inhalation from a car, that takes a long time.
And I mean, obviously, we've got other things to promote, but I want to keep going back to Lucifer and the Father because of all that the guys have done for us. If you've listened to our show and you've been like, well, I'm not going to watch a Christian movie, that's not really my scene, that's not really my community, they're making a lot of movies. And some of these movies, like, they sound really cool. Shawn is trying to sell a script for, obviously, he doesn't need funding for that because he's going to sell the script, but just so that it's clear, they're making all kinds of movies. They're making, like, fun movies. They're not strictly making, like, movies for, like, plays at church. You know, they're making all kinds of movies, and they're making, like, low-budget genre movies, which we have always advocated for on this show. So if you have ever been like, I don't know if I need to donate to these guys, I'm not sure if it reflects me. Like, I mean, no, these are guys that are trying to make cool, fun, independent films.
Absolutely, absolutely. We very much respect indie, low budget, whatever you want to call them, filmmakers. Like, that's the reason why we review a lot of lower budget films, is because, like, we respect the craft. And, you know, in general, we talked historically about exploitation movies. You know, those movies have been highly influential, and those movies were made for, like, peanuts back in the day.
Yeah, and they were cast aside by the industry when they were released. A lot of those films were literally, the prints were destroyed to them. Miami Connection was a lost film. It's amazing.
Yes, absolutely. Just so many lost films that just pure gems. And obviously there are plenty of low budget, awful films, obviously. But at the same time, like with almost any piece of art, there's something at least interesting to look about, even from like a historical, contextual, sociological, whatever you want.
Yeah, that's literally the point of the show, yeah.
Exactly. So at the same time, like, even if you think a movie is garbage or dog shit or whatever you want to say it, but like almost every piece, and I'm not going to say literally every piece of art has artistic merit, because obviously that's not true, but like the vast majority of art has some level of historic or contextual merit to it.
Every
obviously.
piece of art reflects something about the society it came from.
Correct. Absolutely. And there's something to analyze in pretty much anything you can possibly imagine. So, but no. And then also, Brian, do you have any pluggables as always?
As always, you can follow me at JLo Biafra on Instagram and Threads. So you can follow the podcast at the Facebook page, Millennials Are Old, but also the Instagram and Threads Millennials Are Old pod page. That remains the best way to reach out to me in regards to the show. If we have a take that makes you really mad, or you don't like that our show is called Mao, or you are upset that we don't do video content as Scott seemed to be, then that's the best place to reach me. Millennials Are Old pod, all one word, Instagram and Threads.
Absolutely. So with all that out of the way, you know, of course, Lucifer and the Father, you know, all these projects and stuff like that, we're just so excited to see. And, you know, we usually have a kind of plithy, sort of sarcastic way to end this episode, but you know what? I'm not going to do that this time. I genuinely am very happy. And of course, I'm always happy whenever we've recorded a good episode, but like straight up, we're very happy that they came on the pod. They've been very good to us over the years, and we wanted to end the episode on a positive note.
Donate to Lucifer and the Father.
Absolutely.
We will match your donation.
Exact way. That is the exact way I'm going to end this episode. So have a good night, everybody. Sleep tight, and we're going to come back with a more traditional episode for you next time.